Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are doing the full offseason recap for the Atlanta Falcons. And at the end of the video, we will be previewing the 2024 schedule and giving our record prediction for the team and how we think that they're going to be doing. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, go ahead and like this video and also subscribe to the channel to get notified when Ryan and I create new videos. We are doing a full offseason recap for all 32 teams. They will be coming out one video day, Monday through Friday, starting yesterday, I will say June 3rd, Monday, June 3rd. And so every day coming out at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to ring that bell also to get notified when videos come out. So like, subscribe. Ryan, let's get into this here. My Atlanta Falcons did not meet expectations last year, as probably all of you know by now. And if you are a consistent viewer of the channel, then you saw how also my record prediction for the season did not go well, because I think I picked the Falcons for nearly every game until they were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. But that's neither here nor there. I think coming into the 2024 offseason, just kind of looking at where they ended up overall. As an offense, they were middle of the road on total offensive yards. A lot of that has to be done thanks to their rushing performance overall. Defensively, they're actually one of the top defenses in the league in just yards allowed, because they had a great defensive front as well. Us just a great defense as a whole. They started to get a little banged up towards the end here, losing Grady Jarrett, losing a lot of other guys as well. The defensive line really started to falter, and we're going to kind of get into that defensive line here a lot. Actually, in a second, little foreshadowing on their 2024 NFL draft. But still, though, they were still below average when it comes to overall sacks allowed. Only 42 sacks allowed. Only 42 sacks gained. So to say, putting that at 21st overall. And that is the thing to me, I think, that we'll get into here in a little bit. It's just going to be, how can we just provide more pass rushing pressure here? And so luckily we didn't lose too much of that, I will say, kind of in the free agency side of it. I look at Calais Campbell right there. He's still a free agent. He's probably not going to be coming back to the team, especially then too with the draft haul that they had in the 2024 NFL draft. But that's the guy too I'm looking at, like, man, love to see him back in a Falcons uniform here. Talk about on the defensive side of the ball. He's just such a huge guy. He's huge. Oh my God, these are professional athletes. Calais Campbell is just head and shoulders taller than them. And so if he's able to come back, that'd be great, but also to fully understand why he'd want to retire or go play somewhere else. But a lot of the pieces that did move on were on the offensive side of the ball, and a lot of them, sayonara. Don't want to see in a Falcons uniform again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, starting off with Desmond Ridder, I had high hopes for Desmond Ridder, but I think it was a combination of maybe just wasn't ready for the moment, and also, too, I think Arthur Smith just didn't set him up for success at all. He had a lot of turnovers, yes, but also, too, I think Arthur Smith also didn't set him up or maybe coach him well enough. Just for example, I would say one of the plays, it was against the Tampa Bay game at home later on in the season. So when they were on our 7-yard line and they did the fake pitch, blind receiver screen throw across the field. Like, no look. Desmond Ridder, didn't even look at the guy who was open. And to me, yes, Desmond Ridder should have looked. It was a horrible throw. Tampa Bay Buccaneers guy read it perfectly, picked it off. But what the hell are you doing making that play call at your 7-yard? Like, I don't think Desmond Ridder audibled into that play. And so that's stuff to me where I think Desmond Ridder, Arthur Smith wasn't a match made in heaven to begin with. And I think everybody here in Atlanta is glad that they have gone their separate ways, also with us as well. I think looking forward to kind of the new opportunity here with Raheem Morris. Kirk Cousins is going to get into that here in a second. But I think still losing other guys, though. Jonnu Smith, Van Jefferson, Jeff Okudah, Michael Pruitt, Matt Collins, Cordell Patterson as well. All those guys, I think it's just a waste of roster spot anyways here. I really like kind of how much younger we're getting as well overall. I say that, and we go and get Kirk Cousins and also draft the oldest QB in the class, but I digress. But I think, too, all these guys, I think were Arthur Smith guys in an Arthur Smith. And just didn't pan out. Actually, too, you go look at it, Van Jefferson, Michael Pruitt, and also Cordell Patterson followed him to Pittsburgh. So you guys can have him. Go play with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and that for me, I think, I look at a lot of these names and I'm like, okay, not a big deal. The only guy on this list that I think you would be upset, I don't say upset, I'll say upset with air quotes, is Calais Campbell, that you kind of already touched on. He's just a really good player. not just even on the field, but that's a guy you want to have in your locker room, especially for a team that just got so much younger like the Falcons
Yeah.
did. So I think it's going to be a really interesting season for the Falcons because I thought they had all the pieces in place last year. And I think they have all the pieces in place more so this year to really go and compete. And really, I think there's kind of Super Bowl ready. We'll have to see with Kirk Cousins in his first year. But I think I look at the NFC and I think the Falcons are definitely on top of this division. We can definitely go and just get into their
Yeah.
signings and draft picks now. But
I want to pencil that in on Super Bowl ready because I have thoughts about that. But
okay.
Go ahead.
Oh no, but I just think like you go look at what they've done this offseason. Go, you get a franchise quarterback in Kirk Cousins. I understand he's 36 coming off a torn Achilles, but we've seen guys come back from that in 6 months. He was not that athletic anyways, so I don't think it's really going to make a difference in his scrambling ability. And then you go add 3 receivers in free agency: Ray McLeod, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore. Charlie Werner is a decent tight end there. You've got a few defensive guys that can come in and play maybe in some rotational roles. Maybe those guys don't even crack the top 53. They're the 53-man roster. Who knows? But still, I think you get those signings, decent players there. And then I think you go out in the draft, Michael Penix Jr. at the top. Controversial pick. I really like the player.
We love the player. As unfortunate IU Hoosier
Yeah.
football fans, he's the only reason why we watch football on Saturdays. Well, at least for Indiana purposes, we watch a lot of football on Saturdays. Sorry.
No, but then Ruka Rororo, Braylon Trice, Brandon Dorless, all back to back. JD Bertrand as well, coming in all defensive front 7 pieces. And then to round out the draft, Jace McClellan, Casey Washington, and then Zion Logue as well. And I think really when you look at what you want to do in the draft, you want to get guys that are going to come in and contribute to your team. Michael Penix is a bit of an exception because he's a semi-developmental quarterback. But you really got 3 or 4 guys, I think, at the top of this class that are going to be on this defense that you just got Raheem Morris to come in and coach. These guys are going to be influential pieces on this defense really right away. And this was a really solid defense last year, and it definitely got better. I think this offense, the only thing that was really missing was that quarterback. And so I think that this offseason, I think, is exactly what the Falcons needed. They got a veteran quarterback with a wave of young players to come in and I think carry over what the last regime did well into this regime that can hopefully do things better on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I think one thing too, talking about the coaching as well, because Raheem Morris is not the new head coach. Don't know who the defense. I can look up who the defense coordinator is. I'm blanking on the top of my head. But
Jimmy Lake.
Say it again.
Jimmy Lake.
Okay, that's why I haven't remembered it, because Raheem Morris is going to run the defense, and the name I do want to remember, offensive coordinator Zach Robinson coming over from Los Angeles. Both those guys came over from LA, and those are going to be the 2 guys because I think it's going to be good separation of powers here. I think it's going to be something similar to what we saw with Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan when they were here. Dan Quinn's running the defense. Team as a whole, yes, but then Kyle Shanahan was running the offense. He had full control of the offense.
I think that's the best case scenario, but I understand what you're saying.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, sorry. I mean, in the division of powers, I would love for them to have a Kyle Shanahan offense again. I would love that 2016 offense again. Obviously, who wouldn't? I mean by the separation of powers. And I think that's probably going to be best as well. Kirk Cousins is going to focus with Zach Robinson. There's already some familiarity there. I also think, too, one thing I want to see and more often, and think I didn't see it all with Arthur Smith, but I'd love to see more hurry-up offense with how effective we are running the ball. And then also, too, we have Drake London, we have Kyle Pitts. Those are going to be tough matchups in general. And with the speed that we now have with Rondale Moore and Darnell Mooney, those I think are going to be the 2 main guys that are going to be playing more often than Ray McLeod, who I'm actually going to love seeing on special teams with the new rules. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how this Zach Robinson offense, which he does stem off of the Sean McVay type offense, a lot more motion. And when we saw that success from the Falcons offense in 2016, they had that big motion offense here, that Kyle Shanahan offense. It's going to be very similar to that. From what I've been reading, from what I've been seeing, Zach Robinson type offense and what it was like over in LA. So yeah, I would love that. I just want a top 3 offense. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's asking that much. But
quarterback gets an MVP, Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not asking that much.
Yeah.
I will say I do really like adding Eddie Goldman and Antonio Hamilton as well. I think both those guys can be able to come in and provide some good, valuable minutes as well. Eddie Goldman coming back in the league after being out for a couple of years. But then draft pick wise, we talked a lot about Michael Penix, and so I don't really want to address that too much as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing him play in a couple of years from now. I still hold my position that I don't think it was the right pick in the moment, but if he brings Super Bowl to Atlanta, I will absolutely say it was the best pick of all time. What I really want to focus on, though, is more and more I thought about this. I really do like it that they just threw literally the kitchen sink, I think, at the defensive line. And I think they got good players. You can make the argument as well, and I totally understand choosing Ruka Roro. Sorry if I mispronounced. I know I mispronounced it. Over some other guys like Jersey Newton or some other defensive lineman. I can listen to that argument as well, and I totally get it. I'm going to trust that the Falcons board, like that they obviously their scouts, I'm going to trust their scouts and why they went with Rook over Jersey Newton, so to say. But then just throwing it, I like Braylon Trice, I like Brandon Dorless, J.D. Bertrand and Zion Logue, I think, can provide some good minutes as well. Maybe get a potential late steal in Casey Washington, just seeing the highlights, and everyone's comparing him to Puka Nacua just because, like, that's what the Rams found last year. That would also be great. Not expecting too much of it, but still, I think to have another good, young, quick possession receiver.
But
he's not Puka Nacua, but very few people are. I think the Falcons, as a whole, I think had a good offseason. Now, we are recording this before the tampering rules come in, or the tampering violations come in. So I have to kind of see if it was all worth it. I have my own opinions on that. But that's for a separate video. I think in general, though, I think the Falcons definitely improved, dramatically improved. I think from compared to the people that left the organization.
Yeah, and I think especially when you look at where they improved, they got better in the receiver room. The quarterback position specifically, they got a lot better. I mean, hypothetical. If Michael Penix entered the 2023 draft and the Falcons drafted him and he was their starting quarterback last year, how good do you think the Falcons would have been if Michael Penix was the quarterback last year?
It wouldn't have been any worse than what happened. Like the Falcons, I think the 2023 season was worst case scenario for the Falcons. We wanted to come in and Desmond Ridder was our guy. You don't want to see a QB battle as well, especially then too with your QB battle then is between the guy that you want it to be or that you think it can be, and then Taylor Heineke. No offense against Taylor Heineke, but he has hit his ceiling, and that's it. You don't want the QB battle. If it's a QB battle between Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr., I'm actually for that battle because it's like, okay, whoever wins that is going to be top notch. Just because what we've seen on Kirk Cousins, if Penix Jr. is better than that, we'll take that. Michael Penix Jr., if they drafted him last year, would have been the starter. And at minimum, last year would have happened. They would have gone 7-10. But already alone, I'm looking at Desmond Ridder. I mean, Desmond Ridder cost us the 1 second here. Falcons 2023 schedule. Desmond Ridder alone cost us the Panthers game in Week 15. Cost us the Buccaneers game the week before that. He almost cost us the game against the Jets. We lost to the Cardinals in Week 8. Actually, I don't think he played that. I think that was the Heineke game. Michael Penix would have beat the Vikings in Week 9, and that was just a crazy game as well. He would have beat the Titans. Like all these games right here, they would have beat the Commanders. Like they would have beat. They should have won all those games. It was because of a poor QB play.
Yeah,
honestly, I think the Falcons could have gone like 13-4 last year. Just with how awful they were doing down with no QB play at all. Taylor Heineke ended up playing the last couple of weeks. And it was just horrible. It was just overall horrible performance. They lost the locker room. They lost the drive to go and play, and which is I think why also too they added on to them getting blown out. That's my opinion, but I think if Michael Penix Jr. was the QB last year, we would have at least at least gone 7-10.
Yeah, I think you guys would have been more in the range of like 10-7.
Yeah.
Just because I think there's at a few instances that you already named that better quarterback play, and Michael Penix was a better quarterback last year than Desmond Ridder was. And I know that's kind of easy to say because going from college to NFL, there's a big change. But I think if you gave Desmond Ridder the full rookie mini camp to preseason games, I think they would have been significantly, or the Falcons would have been significantly better at the end of all that. And so that for me, I think you get Michael Penix, but you also throw Kirk Cousins on top of that. One of those guys is going to be a really good quarterback for you this year. Hopefully, Michael Penix is a really good quarterback for you guys in the future. But
I hope so.
I
hope so as well.
But and that to me, I think just speaks to how good this team really is. Which I think going and getting into the depth charts now. Here on the offensive side of the ball, pretty promising for the Falcons. The only spot, so Drew Dahlman at center is you lost Matt Hennessy. I know he was shaky a little bit.
Anyway. He didn't even play last year. He had an offseason injury as well. And so I would have liked to maybe see them keep him, but I understand why they don't. Just the only reason I say that just to have that competition. But he was a unrestricted free agent. Because I think they got him in 2020. So that to me, that's a great segue because that to me is going to be the main battle that I'm looking at because it's Kirk's job. Michael Penix is not even going to think about taking that spot there. Like they got Kirk at least for the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. I would say then as well, I look at the receiving room and I think that's going to be the starting 3 receivers right there: Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Rondell Moore. We'll love to see how Casey Washington does. I would love to see how Ray McLeod does. But Jake Matthews is the left tackle. Matthew Bergeron is the left guard. Chris Lindstrom is the right guard. Caleb McGarry is the right tackle. Like all those spots are solidified, unless there's injuries. So who the center is going to be, Drew Dahlman or Ryan Neasel, or Neasel. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. That's going to be where, and that's kind of one of the downfalls of their draft is I wish they would have addressed the center position, bring in more, or address in the offseason as well. As that's where I wish they would have picked up. But that also being said, though, too, I think helping out Drew Dahlman, I think having Kirk Cousins behind you as well, providing offensive line assignments is going to help out a bunch compared to what Desmond Ridder was doing last year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And then I also think, too, Kirk Cousins going to be able to put this running game in better situations as well, just knowing where to specifically attack defenses. Also, Desmond Ridder, I remember multiple times watching Falcons games last year where Desmond Ridder would either have to take a timeout or the Falcons would get a delay of game just because Desmond Ridder was trying to communicate the play from the headset to the team or just call an audible, and the communication was lost somewhere. It just didn't have a smooth flow. And with Kirk Cousins, I'm very confident that he's going to be able to check in and out of plays that are going to best benefit this offense and put them in positions to succeed.
So I always had concerns, with Desmond Ridder. It's I was rooting for him the whole time, and I think he showed promise. But where I really started to be okay, this is not going to be the guy long term was at Tennessee game, and it was Will Levis's first start. So it's Will Levis' first start, and he looked like the seasoned veteran. He was the one that called audibles at the line. He was the one that changed up blocking assignments and pointing out this guy's blitzing. You need to block him. You block him. Move him around. He was the one doing all that. And, of course, then he goes and has the 4-touchdown game. That also, too, was the game that graded Jared towards ACL. I'll throw that in there. If you could at least give me that, please. But he was so impressive in that game, being the quarterback, running the offense, orchestrating everything, putting people where they needed to be. And I never saw that from Desmond Ridder. So I'm looking forward to seeing Kirk Cousins doing that now. He's one of the most highly intelligent QBs in the league. And I think that's going to be a huge benefit to Drew Dahlman, but also to just the offensive line as a whole. This guy's blitzing. You need to go and do this. And I'm also curious in as well. Another thing too with Zach Robinson is kind of what type of blocking schemes is it going to be? Is it going to be a mixed bag or is it solely outside zone? That's going to be.
It'll be a mixed bag.
It'll be a mixed bag. But so that's going to be interesting to see then. Also, how that affects the offense as a whole. Because if that's different for some of these guys compared to last regime, there's going to be mistakes that are made, early on in the season, just making sure that everything is right and everybody's on the same page. So just kind of that overall development. But positional battles, I'm looking at the center position. That's an area that they didn't improve on. But I think also, too, having Kirk Cousins behind center is going to help out a bunch.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think of all the moves, like you could argue like head coaching moves and stuff, they improved, offensive coordinator improved, but that is the crap. I'm totally having a brain fart. The Kirk Cousins move. Jeez. I kept wanting to say Kyle Pitts, and I'm like, it's not Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
But the Kirk Cousins move, definitely the biggest upgrade that they've made this offseason. But let's get into the defensive side of the ball. I think this is going to be, as fascinated as I am to see this offense, I think it's going to be very similar to what Minnesota ran, because Kevin O'Connell also out of that Shanahan, McVay tree, very similar to that. This defense, I'm very interested to see what the Falcons end up doing on the defensive side of the ball. They have, in my opinion, one of the most underrated corners in the NFL in A.J. Terrell. They had a really good secondary last year after signing Jesse Bates in free agency. Like, this is a really, really good secondary. This linebacking group was really good. This front, I'm like 4 or 5, whatever if they end up running a 3-4 with outside linebackers or a 4-3 with just traditional defensive ends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited to see what they're able to do. Adding those 3 guys at the time felt really, really redundant, but now seeing them in this depth chart, Grady Jarrett coming off torn ACL, Arnold Ebiketie, he's an outside linebacker, and then that had success at Penn State a couple seasons ago. Not so much last year with the Falcons, or the last couple years with the Falcons. I really like, he could, I think, really be a good rotational player there. Braylon Trice, like, you really could see all of these guys on the field at the same time in their own unique roles, and I think that is going to be really fascinating to see what Raheem Morris is able to do with this defense.
Yeah, no, and that's what I was going to bring up, is like, there's not really one position defensively. Well, I'll get to that in a second here, because there is one player I'm very curious how he's going to pan out. But as a whole, though, this whole defensive front seven, the overall shift, because Caden Ellis is going to start, Troy Anderson is going to start, Nate Landman had a great year and absolutely is worth the re-sign. He's going to deserve seeing playing time. How is Arnold Ebiketie going to develop? Is he going to take that step? Zach Harrison, is he also going to take that step as well? How is Grady Jarrett going to be coming back from his ACL tear? He is, I think, pretty sure on the other side of 30. If not, he's close.
Grady Jarrett?
Yeah. If you could double check that for me. I think he's 31.
Yeah, he's 31.
Yeah. So, he's just on the other side of 30. I'm sure he still has a couple more years left from him. But at the same time, though, they did a good job, I think, preparing for life after him, as well. And how are these guys going to develop? Where are they going to slide into that role? How's Braylon Trice going to be? And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this defense as a whole develops. And you make great points, because it's almost like they need that pass rusher. They need that stud. So I think that they just threw a bunch of guys. Like, one of these guys has to get 10 sacks. Like, one of these guys has to be a 10-sack a season guy. Like, odds are, at least one of them will be. And that's the goal.
Even if, yes, I agree. But like, even then, so like, if they're playing in like rotational roles, and they have, I mean, realistically, Zach Harrison, Arnold Ebiketie, JD Bertrand, or not JD Bertrand, Braylon Trice, Ruka Roro, Brandon Dorlus, like, all of these guys, even if like they average like 8 sacks, they're still an above average sack team with like 8 or 9 guys that are in high single digit sacks.
That's fine with me also.
Exactly. And then I think that actually makes this defense even better, because then you don't know really where the pass rush is coming from. And that to me, I think, is kind of where they're going is, maybe one of these guys emerges and is a 10, 12, 14 sack guy. But if they just get a bunch of guys with 6 to 9 sacks, like, that's also fine.
We'll take that. Absolutely take that. And so that's how the defensive front seven shakes out. That's just going to be, I think, a storyline for the entire offseason. But one guy also I'm very curious on, Clark Phillips III. He didn't play much, if any at all, in the first half of the season, but came back from the bye, went against the Jets, and had a great second half of the season. All things considered for a rookie day 3 cornerback. I'm curious though, just if his size overall is going to just be his detriment to being an outside corner. And I wonder if where there still needs some help is going to be in the nickel. And if he slides to the nickel, and then a guy like Antonio Hamilton maybe is that guy that goes across from AJ Terrell just for this 1 year, or they still go and pick up a guy as well. That's where I think there maybe could be a little bit of shakeup. I think in the secondary as well. But AJ Terrell is their number one guy. Then you have Jesse Bates as well, one of the best free safeties in the league. I really like D'Amico Helms. Actually, he 7th round pick, and he came on strong last year. He definitely surpassed Richie Grant. I think Richie Grant is a potential cut candidate, just with his overall just kind of position kind of on the team. And as we've seen this new regime already kind of move on from guys from past regimes as well. Richie Grant is an older guy from the Arthur Smith era. So I have to kind of go and wait and see. But that, to me, in the secondary, being very curious to see, because D. Alford, and then Mike Hughes as well. I think there's definitely still some areas to improve. And I think you might want to have Clark Phillips and Antonio Hamilton on the field at the same time rather than D. Alford. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think this defense will definitely – they were top 10 last year, correct?
11th in overall yards. It kind of depends on which one.
I think
you look at. They definitely fell off to injuries, but in the first half of the season, they were one of the top defenses.
This should be a top 10 defense in the NFL in 2024. So I like what they have, both coaching wise, personnel wise. I think that they've done a really good job of beefing up this defense. So let's move on into their schedule here in 2024. And I got to say, tough start to this season. Pittsburgh's not that bad, but at Philly, then Kansas City in weeks 2 and 3, especially with a young offense that guys are still going to be kind of learning each other. I think that's a tough start. You do get to bounce back with 3 straight divisional games, though, against the New Orleans, Tampa Bay, both at home and then at Carolina. I think those are 3 games. I think you guys will probably be 4-2 coming out of this first stretch, which I think is a really good start for the Falcons.
That's what I'm thinking as well. I think we can beat Kansas City at Sunday Night Football at home. I think it's gonna be a big game. And so that was when I immediately saw that, I was like, that's gonna be a fun game to watch as well. Yeah. I think we might still be in Hilton Head, actually. No, never mind. We'll be back in Hilton Head. That'll be the week after. And so but then the next stretch, though, that's where I'm really liking that next stretch with Seattle at Tampa Bay. Dallas, I think Dallas will be interesting. I'm looking forward to kind of doing that analysis because I think Dallas is going to be extremely vulnerable with everything that, like Dan Quinn moving on from the defense, is just kind of what that regime is going to look like. But then New Orleans, Denver, Chargers, Minnesota, all those teams I think are going to be very vulnerable. I think we could go on a good stretch here in that middle portion of the season.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then you have a bye there, week 12. And then to close it out, some pretty easy matchups, in my opinion. Las Vegas is going to be tough. That's a good defense. But the Giants, I think at this point, the Daniel Jones experiment has not really worked out. They kind of got stuck with another season with him at Washington and then Carolina to close it out. I think those are 4 very winnable games, 2 of which I think are locks. Maybe at Washington, depending on where they stand in the NFC, could be slightly difficult. But even then, I think the depth chart wise, the Falcons have a clear advantage.
Yeah, Washington will be interesting, but I agree. Overall, though, those final 4 games, I like our chances here. It's going to be interesting just to go and see how the Las Vegas Raiders offense pans out because we will be going up against Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, and then the Georgia kid, Brock Bowers as well. But they'll have Gardner Minshew at quarterback. So it'll just be interesting to see how they pan out. And then we'll have to go up against Max Crosby as well on the defensive side of the ball. So in general, though, I do like – actually, I think by far, if Falcons have the easiest schedule statistically based off last year's record. I'm not just saying that overall, but it's like factually – I think they have the easiest record, the easiest schedule when it comes to overall record. I think that middle section of the season, if we can get to 4-2 is what you're talking about, especially too if we get a win over Kansas City, that'd just be huge overall momentum building for the team here. But then, it's still division games, division rivals. We'll have to kind of see how things
Yeah.
pan out. Guys will get hurt. I want everybody to be healthy. I want everybody to be healthy for all teams, except when they play the Falcons. But I digress. Let's wrap this up here. Let's go to our record predictions here. And so
Yeah.
I have them going 12-5. I was kind of between 10-7 and 12-5, and so you went 11-6. So that's why I wanted to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
I do think that they will go 12-5. I think there is a chance that they could be vying for home field advantage here, just because their schedule is just fairly easy. Overall, even to Pittsburgh, Philly. I just kind of see how this new secondary works, but also too they had a lot of guys move on. Just kind of the overall new regime, and Philly didn't end the season well last year at all. Kansas City probably will lose that one, but you never know. We'll be at home in week 3 playing Kansas City early on, might be a little more vulnerable. And then 3 straight division games, trying to establish our dominance here. I do like our chances to win 4 games in that stretch. Then the middle stretch as well. I like us against Seattle. I like us against Buccaneers still, even though it's on the road.
Yeah.
Dallas, I think, can be challenging, but I think there's opportunity. And then New Orleans, Denver, Chargers, Minnesota. I think that's where I think we're going to be make the most of our schedule here. I think we can win those 4 games. Then, then to your point, weeks 15 through 18, though, on paper, fairly easy schedule.
Yeah, and that's me. I think you have to factor in they're going to have an off game or two. I think, and then I think probably a slow start to the season. You have new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, especially a first-time offensive coordinator, so he's going to have to find his groove there. I think he has a good team to do it against with Pittsburgh, except for the fact that Pittsburgh has a good pass rush, so that can make things a little tricky. But all in all, I think Falcons, they have an easy schedule. I think 11-6 wins them the division, and I that's really all. That is the first step in the postseason. We stuck a pin in this conversation a little bit earlier, but I think the Falcons, especially by the end of the year, I think will be truly Super Bowl ready. I don't know if they are, like, I look at the Lions, the Packers, the 49ers. Those are kind of 3 of the top teams, the 3 top teams, I think, in the NFC. I think the Falcons are competitive with those teams. I don't necessarily know if they're better.
Well, and so that's where I want to put a pin on is with those teams, I have less questions.
Yeah.
Like Lions and Packers, for example. I don't have questions about them being Super Bowl contenders. They nearly should have been playing each other in the NFC Championship. The Packers didn't blow it. Then actually the Lions blew it also the next week. And those teams, I don't have questions on the 49ers. I don't have too many questions, I think, with the Rams either. I think the Rams can be up there. I think they've improved tremendously. They have the coaching regime in there. I think I have questions with Philly and Dallas. And my questions with Atlanta is, well, how is Kirk Cousins going to perform coming off an Achilles tear? I mean, that's a major question as well. I will say we don't really have a stud number 2 receiver. I mean, we know Kyle Pitts can be the guy his rookie year under Matt Ryan, and Kirk Cousins. Matt Ryan can be much more similar run offense. He was a 1,000-yard receiver. He was also the only guy really on the team worth throwing to. And so that maybe helped out a lot. But the biggest thing to me then is when I think of those teams, there's still still a stud pass rusher, pass presence, like overall good defensive front 7 with the Lions. You have Aiden Hutchinson. I think they had that guy. Rams had Aaron Donald. Green Bay Packers as a whole have a really good front 7. The Niners, they have Nick Bosa.
Yeah,
I got it right. Sanford Nick. So I can't believe that worked actually. But and then in general, then the defenses are much more consistent overall, I feel. And then on top of that as well, then they have great offenses. There's still so many questions for me for the Falcons. I think they can get to round 1, but then after round 1, I won't feel confident until kind of what I see come the end of January. If I think they can beat these teams and how they match up against them, because there's just so many questions with this team.
And that to me, I mean, I look back at the Packers last year, and it was definitely a different scenario, but they had a lot of questions coming into the season. Then there were even more questions about 6 to 8 games through, and then all of a sudden they really were the best team, in my opinion, at the end of the year in the NFC. And honestly, probably in the league with how well that they were playing. And so, like, I think the Falcons, if they could get on, this is going to sound stupid, but like if they could get on that trajectory where, okay, like there's going to be a lot of questions at the beginning of the year. You're going to start out probably a little rocky, first-time offensive coordinator, first-time head coach, new quarterback with new weapons, all of that I understand. But by week 6, really at week 6, when you go to Carolina, if they can get things figured out, they could win. I mean, 10 out of their next 12. Like all of those games are winnable on this schedule.
Yeah.
For them. And so that for me is like, and then they can get a hot streak going right before they get in the playoffs. It gets some confidence. I think that's where the Falcons really could be considered for a Super Bowl team. I also, besides adding that second receiver, I don't really know where else they could like truly go to improve.
Center spot's one. I still think there's just I think a number 2 corner. I think center and number 2 corner are the spots outside of a good receiver too.
Yeah.
And so, but we'll have to wait and see. That's what's going to be fun kind of about this team. There's at least like with Desmond Ridder coming in, there was less. It's almost like there was less questions, which is probably why it was more disappointing of a season last year because we saw Desmond Ridder play, kind of saw the potential.
Yeah.
Saw his stats kind of in those final 4 games of 2022, and like okay, like this kid can do it. Like it seemed like from his 4 games there. But with now though, all the questions that I mentioned, like we have no idea. I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, I know there have been quarterbacks that have come back from major leg injuries, like Alex Smith, for example. But an Achilles injury though, even that in and of itself is a major question. Yes, he can. I see these videos of training camp of him throwing great balls to his receivers and whatnot, and it looks great. But doing that live speed, game speed with a 350-pound man, maybe 350's kind of heavy. Maybe let's do 320. How about that? With a 320-pound man chasing you and potentially fall on that Achilles or that ankle, like how is that going to shape up? So many questions.
Yeah, I agree.
Brings up just overall questions and concerns on how far can this team go? Can they actually win 10 to 12 games? Which on paper they should most definitely do that. Yeah, if they don't win at least. But I'll say the same thing going into this. I'll say the same thing I said last year. If we don't host a playoff game, it is a disappointing season. I don't expect a Super Bowl, but if we don't host a playoff game, then that is a disappointing season.
This is by far the best team on paper in this division. And this is kind of my closing thoughts here, but if this team does not go 10-7 and win at least 10-7 and win this division, I think this is a disappointing season. And I think Michael Penix could be the starting quarterback in 2025. If Kirk Cousins doesn't
potentially, that's a separate conversation, separate video. I disagree, but potentially.
So if they don't win the division, the NFC is going to be a tough spot to get a wild card berth. If they're 10-7 and the Bucs are 11-6, then they'll be a wild card. But if they're 9-8, that's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting spot. They should at least be 10-7 though. Yeah. So especially with how easy their schedule is, they have the easiest schedule in the NFL. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of the Atlanta Falcons 2024 offseason. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And on that, we will see you guys next time.